Hey everyone!
Hola a todos!
This is Jahaira.
And this is Stephanie, and welcome to Cuento Crimen podcast.
Y aquí on the Cuento Crimen podcast, we are a true crime podcast and we bring a new case every Wednesday.
Cada miércoles.
And these are cases that don't get much media attention, so chances are you haven't heard of some of these cases.
And we cover these cases in Spanglish.
Así que agarra a tu abuelita, tu abuelito, tu mamá, tu papá, a quien tú gustes, and come join us every Wednesday for a new true crime case. So, el caso de Maddie pasó en noviembre del 1998. So, it has been a while. And I think that we always like to also state the date and like make emphasis of the date porque 1998 feels like a very different time than now in the present 2023. You know, like a lot of things are different. So, a lot of things that us, now it's common sense, maybe not so much before. So that's where it takes place, 1998. Y como siempre, let's start by talking about who Maddie was. Maddie había nacido el 17 de junio del 1990. So at the time of her murder, she was only 8 years old.
Maddie vivía en Jacksonville, Florida, con sus papás Steve y Sheila Clifton. And their family seemed like a carefree, loving family. Just, your typical, regular, loving family. So, yeah, like what we read, it seemed like Maddie came from a good upbringing.
And of course, in the year 1998, esta era la época donde los niños were allowed to roam free, right? Like nowadays, I feel like it's rare for a child to be going down the street by themselves, right? Back in this time, it was kind of the norm for kids to be out and about playing alone, and just come back by dinner time.
Yeah, I think for me, like it seems like back then, parents were more trusting of like the neighbors and the community. And now you don't know, it's like
more aware,
Yeah, like you're more aware of the danger. You don't trust as many people.
And I think, con el tiempo la gente fue creyendo and believing that, like caras vemos, corazones no sabemos. You can't even trust the neighbor next door. That's the truth. You just can't.
Yeah, exactly. Y entonces, el 3 de noviembre del año 1998, Maddie salió afuera a jugar con su hermanita. And everything was okay. Like, le dieron permiso para poder salir afuera a jugar con su hermanita.
Pero después de unas horas de que Maddie salió afuera, ella nunca regresó a la casa. Y ella fue reportada como desaparecida ese mismo día como a las 5 de la tarde.
And right away, no time was wasted. Authorities, volunteers, family, and friends all came together to search for Maddie.
Y al principio la policía tenía sus sospechas sobre un vecino de Maddie. And this neighbor in particular had been charged with 2 sexual battery cases. Pero estos casos habían pasado hace 15 años, which, has been a while. But because he did have this background, that is the reason why authorities started looking into him.
But after talking to him, he checked out y después de eso, el caso quedó así. They, did continue to search for Maddie for another 6 days, pero no podían encontrarla, and they also couldn't really find any hints that could lead to the person responsible for her disappearance.
Y no fue hasta el 10 de noviembre del 1998 en que todo cambió. And it was a Tuesday morning, and this all happened and it all unraveled in Maddie's neighbor's home.
So, Maddie had another neighbor y él se llamaba Joshua. Él tenía 14 años and Joshua y Maddie eran amigos. They would, play together, right? They're neighbors. Despite the age difference, it's still like close enough where they could like hang out and,
I think like if anything, Joshua kind of saw her like the little sister.
Yeah, they're still, somewhat close in age to play around, right? Like as neighbors. And according to both families, Joshua y Maddie se llevaban bien.
And I think that's also the reason why Maddie's parents were comfortable with Joshua being around Maddie. And when Maddie went missing, Joshua was there. Like he was a volunteer in the front lines, searching for Maddie, trying to pick up any hints, which is why it left people so confused because of what happened the 10th of November.
Esa mañana, la mamá de Joshua estaba limpiando el cuarto de su hijo when she noticed that there was a leak coming from underneath his bed.
Y lo que ella encontró fue una pesadilla. Melissa Phillips, la mamá de Joshua, found Maddie's unalived body under his bed, and she immediately went over to the police station to tell them about her discovery.
That scene to me is so shocking. Like, imagine like you're just cleaning and that's what you find.
Yeah. Or also like the fact that like Maddie's disappearance took like the whole neighborhood know about it. You know, like todos sabían y todos estaban buscando a Maddie. And you have no idea, but Maddie has been inside your son's room.
Yeah. And like to even think that your own son is capable of being involved in whatever she just found is
scary.
Yeah. And I mean, just so glad that like she immediately went to go report what she just discovered. En el momento que Melissa encontró el cuerpo de Maddie, su hijo Joshua estaba en la escuela, and that is where he was arrested.
And it's crazy to think about like how arresting a child might look. Like, te puedes imaginar like all his classmates, su maestro, maestra, like you have like this whole squad of police coming in and taking what seems to be like an innocent 14-year-old. Pero la realidad es que este muchacho tenía a un corpse underneath his bed.
Yeah, I think that's, I don't know, like I remember when I was in middle school seeing cop cars, you know, there in the hallway sometimes, and that always like felt very off.
I mean, like the whole thing of like cops in schools and, you know, that's just a whole other conversation.
Yeah, it's a whole other conversation. So I don't know. I don't know what's the right thing to do. Obviously, he committed a crime.
Yeah.
But it's just, it's unfortunate for the other children to be there
watch.
And so after being arrested, Joshua did confess to Maddie's murder, and he had a whole story with it.
All right, so here we go, y'all. So according to Joshua, on November 3rd of 1998, él estaba en la casa solo cuando Maddie vino y lo invitó a jugar con ella. He said that she had wanted to play baseball.
Just a little background on Joshua and how he grew up. His father, Steve, was very abusive and very strict. And Joshua was terrified of his father. And one of the rules that Steve had era que Joshua no podía tener visitas y él no podía salir if Steve wasn't there at the house. And it didn't matter if his mom was there to supervise or to let him, you know, go out to the street and play. It just didn't matter. Steve had to be there.
And I think this is like a very also like opportunity to learn, like as a parent, fear and respect are not the same thing. And it's truly sad to see when a child, and like working with children, you know, sometimes you see, I mean, I'm not saying that, you know, my children go through this, but like you can tell who is afraid and who respects.
Yeah.
And so, so this was Joshua's upbringing. And if Joshua broke the rules, there were definitely consequences. Entonces, when Maddie came to ask Joshua to come play, Joshua estaba un poquito conflicted, you know, like he knew better. He knew that he shouldn't have gone to play with Maddie, pero al fin, he decided to go out and play. And honestly, like, I don't know, I can't blame him, you know, like, es niño, if it's a beautiful day, todos tus amiguitos están afuera, ¿por qué te vas a quedar adentro?
Right, yeah, I agree with that. Like, los niños quieren salir, right? And if he has a time and he has a friend to play with, like,
why not?
You know, why not? So, él dice que Maddie y él empezaron a jugar baseball, and that while they were playing, he accidentally hit Maddie's eye and it made it bleed.
Y dice que Maddie empezó a gritar y a llorar. I mean, I imagine she's in pain. I imagine the blood is freaking her out. And so because of this, he began to panic as well. Especially porque sabía que su papá no tardaba en llegar en casa. And now look, like he went outside, he disobeyed, and he ended up hurting his neighbor. Entonces dice que lo que él hizo was he dragged Maddie inside his house, which caused her clothes to come off. No, when they found Maddie's body, half of her clothes were kind of off. Like they were coming off her body.
And again, like this is his story of what happened. You know, we don't have Maddie's side of the story. So just wanted to put that out there. Entonces, ya que Maddie estaba adentro de la casa, ella estaba llorando. Y él dice that's when he hit her with a baseball bat to stop her from screaming. Y después de eso, Joshua placed Maddie's body underneath his bed.
And after all that happened, Steve gets home. And Joshua pretended like nothing happened. And he just stayed out in the living room area, just interacting with his parents como si nada había pasado, como si Maddie wasn't underneath his bed who knows if she was still alive.
It just blows my mind como hay gente que puede hacer esto and then just go on about their day and in the same household, just like interacting with your family when you know you just committed something. And like you're 14 years old, you have to have some sense of like, this is bad.
Yeah,
right?
Of course. Yeah. And speaking of that, it sparked a thought in me. And it's like, okay, well, does that mean that this person is like, you know, go down the whole talk of like psychopath versus sociopath?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it just that he was in complete shock? He couldn't even process what had happened. Like, I wonder what goes in the mind. Like, this is the psychology side of it. But
yeah, there's a lot there too because he's so afraid of his father.
Yeah, exactly. Know? But, you know, later in an interview that Joshua did, he did state that the following weeks he was in denial. So era como he was pretending like it didn't happen. And he said, and we quote, "I was putting myself in a fantasy world that nothing had happened. That was my defense mechanism for everything when I was a kid. I never made the decision to ignore it. I just did." End quote.
You know, I think my interpretation of his comment is like, he's a kid and like he's, you know, in bed saying, no, it didn't happen. No, it didn't happen. No, it didn't happen. So I don't know. That's my interpretation of the quote, you know. But
it's just like no matter how hard or how bad you wish it didn't happen.
It did happen.
It did happen. Yeah. And she's there. She's physically there.
Oh my God. This kid was sleeping on his bed.
Yeah.
With a body under his bed. For like a week.
A week.
Even though Joshua never had history of violence or any altercation with police, he was found guilty of Maddie's murder.
And at first, prosecutors thought that the murder maybe had been sexually driven. Pero cuando la autopsia regresó, no había ninguna huella that she had been sexually abused.
They did note that they found no blood in the backyard, indicating que ellos estaban jugando afuera, and no hubo sangre tampoco en el bate.
Which is important, right? Because he said that he had hit her with the baseball bat. So if that's the thing, then where was the blood? Like, I would imagine there was a lot of blood where it happened. But then again, he did hit her in the eye when they were playing. So maybe that's why. Like, her eye maybe didn't bleed.
Maybe it did. Maybe it was a scratch. Or maybe it wasn't like, you know, bleeding a lot.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, exactly. And this comment kind of goes back to like why they thought that she had been sexually abused was because they just didn't make sense of how Maddie's clothes came off from being dragged inside. It just didn't click.
Yeah.
But all in all, that whole argument was dropped.
Joshua, regardless of only being 14 years old, was tried as an adult y el caso fue transferido a Duval County, Florida to Polk County porque estaban preocupados of just the whole media that the case had, and so they wanted to give him a fair trial.
Yeah, and I think also just maybe to like protect him from like the because you know like the public can get really nasty, and he is a kid at the end of the day.
And so that was, you know, one reason, but another reason was just the whole publicity on this case, and they just wanted to protect
Joshua.
Yeah, to protect Joshua.
I guess also because like I mean, a lo mejor quizás en esta época no se usaba o no se escuchaba mucho pues of these wild cases of a child, you know, murdering another child, and so they knew that, you know, the public can be nasty and people are so easy to want to hurt other people. So it was kind of also a way to protect Joshua.
Yeah, protect Joshua, protect the case, protect the families involved.
Y el juicio empezó el 6 de julio del 1999 y duró 2 días.
The jurors took just 2 hours to convict Joshua of first-degree murder y después fue condenado a cadena perpetua sin posibilidad de libertad condicional. Joshua no era elegible para la pena de muerte porque tenía menos de 16 años.
During the trial, Joshua never spoke, so it was difficult to really know if he was feeling at all remorseful for what he did.
I know this is like a crime committed by a kid to another kid, but remorseful or not, what he did to Maddie was cruel. Mientras que he was serving his time, Joshua was able to complete his GED in prison and even took college classes.
And Joshua apparently now, I mean, he's still in prison, but apparently he is a paralegal in prison. Y él ayuda a los otros inmates con sus appeals. And he even works as a tutor for some of the inmates. You know, I am glad to hear that he's doing something productive while, you know, he's serving his time.
and, you know, helping others along the way.
Yeah. And honestly, I really wish that we knew more of what he did when he did. I mean, it could have been fear from his father. It could have been the panic like he claimed that it was, or maybe it was sexually driven. We just don't know.
Yeah.
Pero pues sí, como dijo Steph, lo que él le hizo a Maddie was horrible, and he took her away from all her loved ones, and it's tough, you know? And also like the fact that he was so young it's mind-blowing, and it's a bit sad because, you know, now all that Joshua knows, he's basically living his life in prison. So it's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Joshua has tried to appeal his sentence, pero nunca han aceptado su propuesta.
Y Joshua también no les ha pedido perdón a la familia de Maddie. And he claims that he will not write a letter to them to apologize because he would like to apologize in person. Pero como ustedes se lo imaginan, la familia de Maddie no lo quiere ver.
I mean, I think like an apology can only do so much. You know, what is a sorry going to do?
Yeah.
And I mean, at this point, and you know, it's been so many years, like the family had no choice but to find closure themselves. Or maybe they haven't. Who knows? And yeah, this is the tragic case of Maddie Clifton.
This one's a tough one because it's a kid crime committed to another kid.
I think we had one. I think, what was his name?
Derek Robbie.
Oh, yeah, Derek Robbie. I remember Robbie, but I can't remember his name. But
he was a little boy.
I don't know if y'all remember that case, but the person responsible for his death recently was circulating the internet because he was released,
and
right?
he lives in New York.
Yeah.
Or in that area, I believe, from what I can recall from that case. Yeah.
And he was also around the same age as Joshua. I think
yeah,
he was
14, something like that. Yeah. Yeah, these cases are tough, but, you know, this is, you know, good to talk about.
Yeah. It's tough, but como, like you said earlier, like, he had to know wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
and
still a crime.
Murder. Come on. And he had, I don't know. I just feel like, dile que se supone que sí le pegó. Why didn't you ask for help?
Yeah.
You know, but instead you decided to hit her again and keep her body, you know? So it's hard. It's hard to talk about like most cases on here.
Yeah. I am really interested to know what y'all think. Spotify has this feature if you're listening on...
Oh, I know.
Yes, if you're listening on Spotify, there's this really cool feature that you can write down what you think about the episode. And then us on our end, we can see the responses and then publish them. And then people can see what other people are saying. So we should try that for this episode. So let us know what y'all think. And we'll be on the other end reading that and also publishing it.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I just recently discovered that feature. I was like, wow, this is really cool.
Yeah.
So let's use it, y'all.
Yeah, let's use it. Yeah.
Try it all. Try it out. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you so much for listening to this week's episode, and we'll see y'all next week.